Good day, everyone. Welcome to our new day of discovering and learning. Today's video, you will learn about the particle nature of matter and the particle theory of matter. This is Module 2, Quarter 3 of Grade 8 Science. But before I start my presentation, let me share to you the objectives for today. We have two objectives. First, explain that matter is made up of particles. Second, explain the properties of solid, liquids, and gases based on the particle nature of matter. But I have a challenge for you students. After viewing this video, I want you to think of any performance task. Could it be in a project form, modeling making, or drawing making, that would allow you to explain that matter is made up of tiny particles, or allow you to explain the properties of solids, liquids, and gases based on the particulate nature of matter. Can you do that? Of course, I know you can do it. Let's have a review with our previous lesson. In our previous lessons, we learned that there are two things in the universe: matter and non-matter. You learned that matter has mass and occupies space, while non-matter has no mass and does not occupy space. You also learned the three basic states of matter. These are solid, liquid, and gas. You learned also some selected properties of matter related to the states of matter, such as mass, volume, shape, compressibility, expandability or expansibility, and density. Let me ask you this question. What is matter made of? Matter is made up of tiny particles. These particles are very tiny that we can't see with our naked eye. We can picture these particles as small tiny particles that are packed together to form an object or matter. The picture shows the tiny particles are packed together in solid and liquid and in gas. And the way the particles of object looks and behaves, we call it properties. Okay, so let us study the behavior of properties of particles in solid. Let's study the space between particles, the arrangement of particles, and the movement of particles in solid. In terms of space, the particles are very close to each other. In terms of arrangement, the arrangement of particles in solid are arranged in a fixed, regular pattern. And the movement of particles in solid is particles cannot move freely but constantly vibrate in their fixed position. And the properties of solid particles are as follows. It has a definite shape, definite volume, are relatively incompressible, and do not flow. How about the particles in liquid? At the right side, there is a diagram of a liquid particles. Try to observe the picture. In terms of space, the liquid particles are close together but farther apart with a little empty space. The movement of liquid particles constantly move over a short distances and slide across each other. And the arrangement of liquid particles are not arranged in a fixed regular pattern. The properties of liquid particles has no definite shape, has a definite volume. The particles of liquid also are relatively incompressible. The particles of liquid are able to flow and take the shape of the container. Let us also study the particles of gases. At the right side, there is also the picture of the particles of gas. In terms of spaces, the gas particles are very far from each other. The movement of gas particles constantly move freely and randomly in all directions. And the arrangement of gas particles are well separated with no regular arrangement. And the properties of gas particles are: it has no definite shape, it has no definite volume, the particles of gas can be compressed. Let us recall the question on what is matter made of. This question will be answered precisely and briefly by the theory that we are going to discover today. In this theory is what we call as the particle theory of matter. It is also known as the kinetic theory of matter. So what is this theory all about? This theory is very significant because it describes the matter and it explains the behavior of solid particles, liquid particles, and gas particles. This theory also has 5 main ideas. Okay, what are these 5 main ideas? Let's start with the first idea. The first idea of the particle theory of matter is all matter is made up of tiny particles. This idea will be best explained if we're going to discover or know who are the philosophers who discovered about atom. And one of these is Democritus. Democritus is a Greek philosopher in 460 BC to 370 BC. He suggested that matter is made up of tiny particles which are too small to be seen. He thought that if you kept on cutting a matter in a smaller and smaller pieces, you would eventually come to the smallest possible particle, and he called this atomos in Greek word, which means indivisible. But second philosopher tries to argue or disputed the idea of Democritus. He suggested that matter is made up of earth, air, water, and fire instead of atom. Another philosopher studied also about atom in the name of John Dalton. He said that all matter is made up of smaller particles called atom. And he further studied that atoms in an elements are identical. He also added that atom cannot be created nor destroyed. The second idea of particle theory of matter is the idea that these particles have spaces between them, meaning that when we combine a 10 ml of water and a 2 ml of sugar, we could not expect to have 12 ml of total volume, but less than 12 ml. Why is this so? This is because liquid water particles have spaces between them. And what happens is, if we mix sugar and water, the water particles, the particles of sugar move into the spaces of water particles. So that is why we come up with less than 12 ml of total volume. Okay, the third idea of the particle theory of matter is the idea that these particles are always moving. This explains why perfume spread throughout the room. Have you experienced also or questioned why food coloring, coffee, salt, or sugar scattered throughout water without mixing it? This is because the particles of matter are always moving. If you could recall the properties of particles of solid, liquid, and gas, it also explains that there are movement. In fact, we try to differentiate the movement of these particles in three states, wherein in solid, it moves in a form of vibrations. Particles cannot move freely because they are tightly packed, but constantly vibrate in their fixed position. While in liquid, the particles constantly move over a short distances and slide across each other. While in gas, particles constantly move freely and randomly in all directions. The degree to which these particles move is determined by the amount of energy they have and the relationship to other particles. The fourth idea of the particle theory of matter is the idea that the particles of matter attract each other. This explains the intermolecular forces of particles. And we can say that there is a greater intermolecular attraction or forces between solid particles than in the other particles. One example of this that tries to explain is the example of the three bottles. Let us say bottle 1 is filled with solid, let us say sand, and second bottle we filled it with liquid or water, and the third bottle we filled it with gas or air. And which do you think of the three bottles will be squeezed easily? Of course, the answer is the third bottle. This is because the third bottle is in gas. The particles in gas have a lesser attraction to each other. That is why we can easily squeeze the bottle filled with gas. The fifth idea, or the last idea of the particle theory of matter, is the idea that adding heat to matter makes the particles move faster. As we can see in the diagram, particles are set in three setups. In the first setup, the particles move. We can expect that the particles move slowly because it has a least amount of heat or temperature. In the second diagram, if we're going to increase, what happens? The particles will keep on moving or faster. and increase more heat, the more it moves faster. So that's all for our today lesson. Thank you for watching and have a nice day. Thank you.